I want to wrap up the podcast with one of the most legendary stories I've ever heard from anybody. And it's the story of, this was during a spirit season. This had to be 7 or 8 years ago because I was a store manager at that time. CK used to throw what we called the banquet at the end of the year, and it would be a big party, like at a bowling alley or something like that. All the managers and all of the employees who had worked like 2-3 years plus were invited, and it was just an awesome way to put a bow on the season. I don't know if this was that big party, but it was certainly one that we were all looking forward to. We were trying to lock in a date or a time with you, and that's kind of where the story starts. So I'll hand it off to you from here.
One of my absolutely least proud moments, but it makes for a great story. And I will begrudgingly tell this to the world and expose myself because I've already shown what an idiot I am at my core. But I have this teacher of mine. He's my high school teacher. And his name is James Padilla. And he's one of my absolute favorite teachers of all time. He taught my 10th grade humanities class. And he ended up moving to California, and we've stayed in touch over the years, and he's become an amazing mentor of mine, somebody I really look up to, not only because he's an amazing Catholic and somebody who knows so much about his faith and lives his faith, but he knows so much about the arts. And so I just love picking his brain about anything from Shakespeare to tell me about this piece of art that's on the top of the Sistine Chapel. Like, he knows everything. And so we get into these really deep, wonderful conversations that I absolutely cherish in adulthood, because it seems like he did this even when I was in school with him. He called it intellectual curiosity. Nothing was ever off limits. If you were curious about it, ask him and we'll discuss it. And so the first 10 minutes of every class always started with IQ and intellectual curiosity. And you could talk about it. It was the most collegiate experience you could have while also being in high school. Like, he treated you like you were an adult. You didn't get in trouble for being curious about anything from sexuality to anything. So you build this amazing rapport with a teacher like that. And now fast forward years and years later, I'm now an adult and I've just had my first child, and it's Halloween season. In fact, Carter was born on October 12th. No, this is the next year. So Carter's 1 year barely and some change. And so Jim comes into town, and Jim's one of these guys. He doesn't give you any notice that he's coming to town. He'll just call you like, "Hey, I'm in town. You want to hang out? And also, like, do you have a place that I might be able to shack up?" He's literally like one of these old burnt out hippies that does that type of stuff, you know? And of course, he always knows, like, of course, like, we'll make a place for you, and he's always welcome. The door is always open to you, and it's not like you need to give me a ton of notice. But now I have a kid, so things are a little bit different. Anyways, he shows up in time. It's like the worst possible time. It's Halloween season. I have a 1-year-old kid, and I'm stressed out of my mind. And also at this particular time, this is like, only 2-3 weeks before Halloween, and all of your systems start getting exposed that are failing. And at this time, we had a register that wasn't working in Farmington. And so I needed to bring a new register unit up to Farmington. So I told Jim, I said, "Hey, like, I'm going to be gone all day. I'm running up to Farmington. I need to handle some things up north, so I won't be able to see you." But I was like, "If you want to jump in the car, I'd love for you to ride with me, and that way we can kind of chat and, like, we can have our awesome talks that I so much love and adore." "Oh, absolutely." So we get to driving, and on the way there, he starts talking about how his father, he's been paying property taxes on a piece of property up in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, that he's never seen. His father left it to him when he died, and him and his siblings, and they've been paying on it every year. He's never stepped foot on it. He has no idea what the property looks like or anything. Well, Pagosa Springs is a little out of the way, but it's not like it doesn't ruin your whole day if you kind of take a little detour, stop through Pagosa Springs, and then circle to Farmington. So I said, "Jim, let's take a little detour. Let's go check out that property, And then we'll go to Farmington, do what we need to do there. I'll handle my business, and then we'll head back, and we'll be back in Albuquerque in time for my spirit function, my bowling night that I'm throwing my employees. So best laid plans, but the results weren't exactly that. So we go to Pagosa Springs, we see his property, we have a short lunch in Pagosa, and then we're on our way out of Pagosa to Farmington, New Mexico. It's about an hour drive from there. We get about maybe 5 minutes outside of Pagosa, and Jim says, "Hey, we're in Colorado. Marijuana's legal here, right?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." And I've never explored marijuana up to this point, so I know nothing about it. He's like, "Well, I have this great aunt, and she eats these wonderful chocolates, and she says that it helps her sleep great at night, and I would really like to try some." So without hesitation, I just turned around, and I knew where this dispensary was because it was near where my parents have a house in Pagosa. So I drive there, and I walk into my very first dispensary with my 10th grade high school teacher.
That's awesome.
And Jim evidently has messed around with marijuana, but it was like way back in the 70s. It's been a long time since he's done anything with cannabis. So we go in there, neither one of us knowing anything, and there's this bud tender behind the counter, and what do you want? We don't know. Tell us what he should have. This is what his aunt takes. And so anyways, she suggests a couple of candy bars, and they're running this special, like get a couple of candy bars and they'll throw in a joint for free and whatever. So he ends up leaving with like a baggie of stuff. And so we get out into the parking lot, and it's this kind of rectangular bar that's broken up into multiple pieces, and it was 150 milligrams of THC in this Boulder bar. We got no instructions on how much we should ingest. So we're coming at it completely blind. And I also have no idea what the effects of marijuana will be on me. So I go into it very timidly, and it's 15 squares, each square being 10 milligrams, yeah. Right? So I eat one, Jim eats two squares. And we drive to Farmington. I do all of my business fine. I don't feel any different at all, actually. So we get into the parking lot of the Halloween store after I finished all my business. And he says, "Do you feel anything?" I was like, "Not at all. I feel fine." He's like, "I don't either." So he just splits the bar and the remainder of the bar in half, and I eat the other half, and he eats the other half, and we get on our way. And by the way, the thing was delicious. It was really good chocolate. So we get on the road, and it wasn't long. It was probably 30 or 40 minutes, and I started feeling it hit me, and I started feeling really funny. And I realized that I was going these long periods where I was driving, but I couldn't remember the last time I looked at the road. I was looking at him. I realized I could only concentrate on one thing at a time. Yeah. I could either concentrate on his voice talking, or I could concentrate on the road. And so I would snap back, and then I would only be locked into the road. And I'm like, okay, I've got to control this thing. And then I would have these things, and I could hear him talking, and I was starting to freak out. And then the road, the line, it kept coming in waves and hitting harder and harder. And I started getting very paranoid. And also I was having visual hallucinations where the road was starting to move. And so I looked at Jim, and I was like, I think I'm really high. I'm freaking out. He's like, "Oh, really? I'm fine. I feel fine." I was like, so this calmness hit me. I was like, thank God. I must have had all the THC in that bar, and he's fine. So I'm thinking all right, I just got to ride this out, but Jim's cool. So Jim started driving. We were in a rental car, by the way. I'd rented this car for the season.
Oh, great.
And it was this Ford Escort. And so now I'm sitting in the passenger seat, just tripping out. But I'm a little bit relieved because now I'm not in control of the car. And Jim, for the first few minutes, seems fine. And then I realized this dude's getting really messed up too. So I look at it, and he starts swatting at the dashboard, and he's like, "Oh my God, these lights, they're so distracting. And he's swatting at the dashboard. And then I realized like these cars, they seem to be passing us really fast, you know? I look at the speedometer and we're going like 35 on a 70 mile an hour highway. And I'm like, now the panic attack hits me in hardest possible way. Like I'm not only like scared that I'm going to die, I was also scared that he's either going to die or go to jail. Because I'm like, we are out of our minds right now. So there's only one little town between Farmington and Albuquerque, and it's Cuba, New Mexico, and they have exactly one motel there. So we, on our way into Cuba, I've already come up with the realization there's 0% chance that I'm making it to Albuquerque, and my wife is gonna murder me if she knows that I got high with my 70-year-old high school teacher while she's at home with a 1-year-old. Like, this is a disaster. So I'm like, Jim, we are gonna go to this motel. I'm gonna get us a room for like 4 or 5 hours. We're gonna sleep this off, and then we're gonna get home. It'll be the middle of the night, and my wife will never know that I was such an idiot.
And at this point, you're also getting texts from all the managers being like, hey, I got 15 people ready to go.
So my primary concern was my wife being mad at me. My secondary concern to that was I've thrown this event that I'm not going to be able to host, and nor would I be willing to show myself in this condition in front of people that are employed by me. And so I start calling people in my inebriated state. And I would call you. I called Jesse and I said, hey, Jesse, I talked to all the other managers and they don't have anybody from their store that wants to go. So I'm canceling bowling night. Then I would call the next manager and say, hey, I talked to all the other managers. There's nobody that wants to go from the store, so I'm just going to cancel it. Never in my mind did I think all of these people, like, they talk to each other every day. Like, they're going to like reach out and be like, I've got a full store of people that want to go. So they all cooperate with each other and realize, like, no, we all have multiple employees that are really counting on going. And CK's out of his mind. Like, what is this guy doing? So anyway, next, so fast forward, I pass out. I have no idea how I even got in to rent this room. I remember sitting in the chair, in the seat of this car and feeling so heavy. And I remember thinking there's no way I can even get out of this seat. Somehow I rent this room. I set the alarm for 3:00 in the morning and pass out. 3:00 in the morning comes and I still feel fog. Like, I still feel high, if I'm being honest. But like, my want to get home to not disappoint my wife and own up to the fact that I've done this absolutely ridiculous thing outweighed the fact that I was still not feeling right. So I go out, I start the car, I shake Jim awake. I said, Jim, we got to go. So Jim wakes up, and I remember him kind of like stumbling. I could tell he was still stoned too. And as he comes out the door of this motel, he trips over the concrete parking like barricade that you park up against, falls flat on his face. And like, it was horrific. The guy, his finger is sticking out 90 degrees. He's bleeding out of his forehead. It is a disaster. So I go and I pick up Jim and I put him in the car and I put a towel over his thing. I'm like, I got to take him to the hospital. Like, this dude's messed up. So I drive to the nearest hospital, which is in Rio Rancho, Sandoval County Regional Medical
Center. So he drove an hour and a half with his pinky just broken.
Well, and this guy's on blood thinners for his various health issues. So it's literally pouring blood.
I can't even imagine that. That's a long 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm freaking out. So we get to this hospital, and I remember they're in triage and they're taking his vitals, and his like blood pressure was perfect. He couldn't believe. He's like, this marijuana stuff is incredible. He's like, my blood pressure's never been this good. And he's like so high. He still doesn't, like, he doesn't understand that his finger's sticking out sideways. And so anyways, the whole thing cascades to where I end up having to own up to my wife. Like, I have to call her and say, I'm at the hospital with Jim. Like, I did this really stupid thing. I ingested marijuana for the first time, had no idea how much to eat. We clearly both overdosed. And like, it led to a lot of problems. I'm so sorry, whatever. And she ended up being like way more understanding about it than I thought she'd be. I should have given her more credit about it in the first place. I should have just called her and owned up to it. But like, your pride in that moment outweighs yourself. So anyway, then it was a while later that I had to fess up to you. I was like, hey, Jess, you know that time when I canceled bowling? Like, I don't like holding secrets from you. Here's what happened. Like, I want to tell you honestly that this is what happened, so you don't think I just like am lying to you, but this is the circumstance. And I remember you just laughing.
Oh, dude, it's a great story.
But it's still one of my most embarrassing, non-proud moments, but it is a great story.
Yes, it is.